So what is it then, Ant? The problem with getting old?
The problem with getting old, the frustration within me, is that suddenly you become a kind of a useless person, unemployed. My church at the moment, I'm a vicar and a pastor of a church. I'm at my very best.
Yeah.
And I'm at my pinnacle of knowledge,
Yeah.
theology, how to communicate best, and they want to get rid of me because of my age.
So you've got energy, you've got spark, you get up on a morning, you want to share that knowledge of decades of building, of learning, of making mistakes.
Yes.
You want to share it. So can you share with our audience how old you are?
I'm 75, 76 next year.
Well, I think people will agree you don't look it, right? And I've known you for 20-something years, 30 years maybe now. And you've always been sparky and full of energy and full of life. And I find it astonishing that they want to let that go. Now, let me ask you a question. How did we build the democracy that we take for granted? Britain started it a couple of centuries ago and more. We then exported it around the world. We built the democracy, we built our societies based on knowledge,
Yes.
wisdom,
Yes.
experience,
Yes.
and age. And
Age.
we did, when we built that democracy, we didn't live in a world where a 23-year-old took precedent over a 75-year-old. And I think this is what's happening in society. Let me know what you think. That we are crumbling in the West because we used to be a great meritocracy where we would listen to people with age and experience and wisdom and learn from them.
Yeah.
And you, me, people like us with experience would bring up the youth, and then the youth would become older, they would take over and then bring up the youth below. Has it turned on its head now?
I think to a degree that it has, David, but I do think that the elderly people are full of gold, and it is the duty, I would say even the word duty, of the young of age coming to the likes of us and getting the gold out of us.
Right.
Saying, Granddad, how did this happen? How did you do that? What did you do?
Yeah.
And I think there's forgive me for saying this, young people, but I do think there is an ignorance, an innocence, a lack of passion from young people today.
Yeah, that you might be right, but this is fueled by older people who insist on giving great jobs of responsibility to others because they are young.
Yes.
Youth now is seen as being much more important than wisdom and experience.
Yes.
And that youth then in turn believes that they are all powerful, all knowing, what they think is correct politically and otherwise, and that they don't want to listen to you. And who are you? You're old. You've had your time. Get stuff. We don't want to listen to you, what you have amassed inside your brain. This is where we're going wrong, in my opinion, in society in the West, which is why we are imploding. One of the many reasons why the West is imploding. It's like the end of the Roman Empire. We're living through the end days of Western democracy as we know it. And this is one of the problems we give youth, and I think it's great to give them opportunities, but encourage them to learn from people like you. And explain what's happening to you right now.
What's happening to me, I've become of a certain age, and I want to say that word again, age.
That's the only thing. This is your only problem, age.
This is it. And as if at a certain age, you've nothing left to give or to share or even to have the experience of emptying and giving away some of my wisdom to younger people. I think when you say just youth, I think beauty, interestingly enough, we seem to think that this age of youth, beauty is something more valuable.
Good point. Yes.
Than wisdom.
Sure.
Than I've worked hard, very hard, David, at gaining. I still do daily, gaining knowledge.
Right. And I go back to making mistakes. I'm sure, and I've known you for a very long time, that you have lost count of the mistakes that you've made, and because of that, you've gained invaluable wisdom,
Yes.
which you could share with younger people.
Yes.
But the problem also being is that they're not willing to listen to you because they've been told by older people that how they think is correct and not to listen to you. So they are destined to make the same mistakes that you've made.
Yes.
And solved.
Yes.
Where I think, and you might agree, that if you were able to unburden the vessel of knowledge, you would fast track these younger people.
That's very good, David. That's
and
well put.
Help them go through life without making the same mistakes you've made and likewise I've made. So you're not even, they want to put you on the scrap heap, Ange, but before they do it, they don't even want to suck the knowledge out of you. They don't care about that. Am I right?
I think you're right to a large degree, and I think you put that nicely, David. But my problem is when I look back to my own youth,
yes, I
didn't.
No. Well, it's a okay.
You know,
and this might be nature doing its thing.
Yes.
So we all develop, our own unique characters and all of that, right? And I think humanity has always had to deal with that.
I think so, but I did find an old woman. Yeah. She was blind, she had no eyes. And I would go round to her house to read to her. But she told me so many stories. And because she had no eyes, I used to beg her to take them out. And because she had to wash these out. It was way back and she told me this story how, the second eye went and how she was pushed into such extreme darkness that she hadn't comprehended. But when I used to read to her, she'd sit and then she'd pause and then she'd ask me to read it again because I didn't quite get it, and then she'd tell me, I'd say, tell me that story again. Yeah. Tell me the story again.
Who was she? What was she? What were you learning from her?
I became a Christian early, and she was a Christian, and she was telling me that when she lost her second eye, she just collapsed. She came home and they brought her to this residential place where people look after you. But she tried to get the kettle and it burnt all her arm. She cut herself on a knife because she was going around in darkness. And then she shouted out. She said, I've had enough of this. I can't take any more, God. And she went into her bedroom. She sat on her bed and wept. And then she said, this man, who she thought was Christ, came into the bedroom, looked at me, and she said he was attired in rust-coloured robes with a little golden belt around his chest. And he looked at me and he said, Millie. I didn't even know that was her name because I used to call her Mrs. Lord. And he said, Millie, have I been with you so long and you haven't known me? And she said, at that, he lifted from the bed and walked away. And it changed my whole outlook. And it's changed my outlook because that scarred me. It put a wound on me in my head because I thought to myself, did she really see Christ? Or was it an imagination? Was it trauma? What really happened there? But unless I had been going over, on a regular basis, habitual basis, reading to her, I would have never have discovered.
No. What did she teach you otherwise? I mean, this was your early journey in the world of being a Christian. Yes. So she was an older Christian. So you obviously learned from her an awful lot in that regard.
Yes.
What else did she teach you? And was it almost like a subliminal teaching by just being in her company and listening to her? And another question: did you respect her for being elderly? Was it something that you were expected to do, to respect your elders?
There's quite a lot of questions there, David. First of all, let me say what she taught me most of all was the art of listening. Mm-hmm. She taught me how to listen. Because she was not easy. She was not an easy communicator. She'd get things mixed up. She's blind. And as for respect,
I think what I'm trying to get at is that when you were young and I was young, I think we were taught to respect our elders. And I do, and this makes me sound like, they say you turn into your father eventually. I'm certainly turning into mine. And I think we're taught now not to respect our elders, to go back to the original sort of format of this discussion. There is very little respect for our elders. Had you been a young man now and meeting this old lady, you would likely shun her for being old and blind and someone of no great worth. And I think this is, to get back to the root of this conversation, I think this is where we are. Old people with experience and knowledge to share are now seen as being worthless. And that's one of the reasons why society is imploding upon itself. And you might not believe this to be the case. It sounds very conspiratorial. It really isn't. Just look at the facts. It might take a couple of generations, but we are going down the plug hole. And this is one of the reasons. So going back to that, did you have a sense of respect for her because she was elderly? Or did you look upon her and think she's just a silly old woman, she's blind?
I think I had not a genuine respect. I just did it out of a sense of duty, Dave.
Ah, well, okay. That's good enough, and.
But if I was here now, today, if I was a young man now today, I would do I think I would do what you have said. I wouldn't even bother with her.
Okay, so you've been corrupted by the modern disease then. So you think, because of what you see in the media and everything else, that old people are not really worthwhile?
Yeah,
even though you're suffering the consequences of this?
Yeah, I think I've got a greater respect for elderly people. Now here's the rub, David. You see, young people don't come to me.
Ah, okay, good, good. I like this.
But I do go to young people.
Yeah.
We're fortunate because in our church we have young people.
Right.
But I share with them.
Are you trying to share knowledge with them? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes, knowledge, care, concern, love.
Mm-hmm. Do they accept it?
I think they do, David, yes. But the interesting thing is they don't come to me.
Okay, but when you were young, like those people, you're referring to the young people, did you go to older people? Did you want to take information from people who had lived longer than you, gained more experience? Did you think it was a valuable experience to take that information from them?
Yes, most certainly.
Good, yeah.
I did attach myself to many older people to learn.
which is how society develops, how humanity has developed. Because if we never learned from older people and their experiences, their successes and failures, we wouldn't have got to the point of where we are today. My point being, and I'm using you as the perfect example, is that the coin has been flipped and we're going the other way now. We now, as you say, you mentioned beauty. That's fascinating. You are so right, because we live in a world of video and images.
Yeah.
That people think it's much more important to listen to young people, but also young, beautiful people.
Yes.
And it's proving not to work out very well, as far as I can see.
Yeah, and I think one of the dangers is, David, when you say that, is most young people's heads are downward.
Oh, well, I know. What do you mean in a phone, a tablet? I know. Well, I'm guilty of that. I think a lot of us are, but I try not to be. But yes, you're right. All that information. I suppose what they think maybe is that anything they need to know is in the palm of their hand.
Yes.
They don't need to speak to you. You're old.
Yes.
Go and retire somewhere, for goodness sake.
Yes.
But not for too long, because we want your money.
Yes. Oh, it's a cynical world.
I love being cynical.
Yeah.
I just find it fascinating. But you're in a situation now where, I've known you a long time. You're as good as you ever have been, if not even more, because you know more now than when I first met you.
Yes, I do.
And Anthony's not just a vicar. You're a businessman. You're a world traveller. You write books. You're an avid reader. There's so much more going on with you than just being a part of your church. So you've got so much information to give. And I want what's inside your head. And I've learned a lot from you just by being your friend.
Yes.
And I find it very frustrating that you're going to be put out to pasture.
Yes.
When the church that you're in are going, have they fallen foul of this idea where youth is more important than age? Who are they going to replace you with? A young buck?
Yeah, well, it will be a younger person, yes. But
what have you said to them? Look, I've got energy. It doesn't matter how old I am. I want to do this. Have you said that to them?
No, I haven't. I'm just so sad and disappointed within that. Who's told them that I can no longer do the job?
Yeah.
Who said that I'm not a good communicator? Who's told them this? I think they should be paying me quadruple.
I agree.
For my knowledge, the care, the concern, the love that I have, and they're just going to nip it in the bud and just take it away and just resign it. Just put it in a corner somewhere and send me, pay me a coal bill now and again for my services rendered. I've been in the ministry, I don't know how long. My wife would know, but it must be 40, 50 years.
Well, it's got to be, hasn't it? Now, do you think this is a decision? It can't be a decision made on you personally. This must be like kind of corporate level.
Yes.
It's like when they get to a sort of kind of age, mid-70s, get shot of them, they're useless. They're not, building our democracy over a couple of centuries, even building, dare I say, the British Empire, which was built on a meritocracy. I don't care what anyone says. If you had talent in the early days of the empire, they couldn't give a monkey's where you came from, whether you came from the dirt or aristocracy. If you had talent, tenacity, skill, and you were brave and you were a hard grafter, you could go places. And I've written about this in my books. And so if anyone wants to pick me up on it, have a go, because I can give you endless examples of people who came from nothing, with no education, no nothing, but extreme talent who went places. So in those days, they looked at an individual and thought, what can she offer us? They're not looking at you and saying, what can you offer us? They're just looking at your age and get shot.
Yes.
It'd be different if you're infirm and and you couldn't move around.
Yes.
And you'd lost your marbles.
Yeah.
I can understand that, go to a nice, happy retirement. But they're missing a trick here. And it's not just in your church, it's in organisations across the West.
I agree, David.
Which is why we have bad service. Incompetence. You can't get anything done. You can't rely on anyone.
It's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get comments on this, but let me know what you think. And what are you going to do about it? And is there anything we can collectively do about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. What can we do? Well, I've just got to keep busy. I've just got to keep travelling, writing, thinking, exercising.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you very much, David. We've put people out when really they're just coming into their very best years, David.
It's strange because you at 75 now, I sense, are about to bloom.
Yes.
You could give so much now over the next few years.
Yeah.
And as you put it, you're being nipped.
Yeah.
Nipped in the bud.
Nipped in the bud. And for what? Age, folk. Age. Don't become old, because if you become old, you become unemployed and a bit of an old, useless piece of flesh. It's awful. It's dreadful.